I'm Sonia Morton-Firth, and today I'm talking to Richard Sharp, the CEO of Team Rubicon UK. We talk about the massive challenge faced in supporting the NHS staff and the shielded population that are in desperate need of food. In this interview, Richard makes a call to the veteran community to step forward and serve their country once again. Well, Richard, it's great to have you on my show and this series, the special series of COVID-19. Tell me about Team Rubicon and its current mission in this situation that we're facing.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, thanks for having me on. 6 weeks ago, not many people in the UK had probably heard of Team Rubicon UK. We're built to be an international disaster response agency. So we retrain predominantly the veteran community to respond to international disasters, and we get life-saving aid into the very hardest to reach corners of disasters around the world. We're normally working in Mozambique, the Bahamas, Indonesia, so out the way of the British press. But 6 weeks ago, when the government approached us about the crisis it was gripping here, we started doing mission analysis for them because we've got a lot of ex-military planners here. It became apparent there was a role that we should be playing here in the UK, and something we're incredibly proud to do is to serve our own communities. So we stood up 6 weeks ago essentially a recce screen across the country, deployed liaison officers into all the regions, working with the Standing Joint Command, which is the British military's contingent. You know, when you see it being talked about the army supporting in the press, well, that's the Standing Joint Command. So we put liaison officers in there to understand the unmet needs in the communities, because every community in the UK is different. You know, we're culturally different, we have different needs, different socioeconomic development. So we started building this rich, intelligent picture, but then trying to provide strategic coordination for the voluntary sector. But also importantly, what this organisation is built around is rolling its sleeves up. So where we saw critical gaps in infrastructure or in the NHS, we deployed our response teams, bolstered by a new cohort of veterans. We put out a rapid recruitment call to the veterans, and we've had nearly 4,000 sign up. So
wow.
Everything from logistics in communities, last minute emergency feeding at food banks, all the way through to supporting the NHS with PPE assembly and distribution, and also quite sensitive tasks in mortuaries, where mortuaries have had to be stood up at short notice. We're in there providing the work they need, unfortunately moving the deceased away.
What do you think, or why do you think veterans are stepping up to this challenge? What makes them an ideal, if you like, volunteer in this situation?
There's a variety of reasons. The easy thing to talk about is what the military teaches you. You know, it gives you hard skills, and there's all that stuff. But I think it's deeper than this. And most interviews I've done recently have been more about what attracted us to the military in the first place, and why that makes us perfectly suited to this kind of work. You know, I was a Royal Marine, and I decided to join the Corps when I was about 8 or 9, and I wasn't looking at benefits or hard skills at that point. That's a calling, that's a pulling for a variety of other reasons. We think it's because service is in our DNA somehow, and we want to belong to teams. We don't want to be the centre of attention. We want to be part of joint effort that achieves things together, not on our own. And that mission is bigger than ourselves, and it's important. You know, when I served through the Afghan conflicts, you know, you're attached to the world, you're connected. So you're seeing things on the news that you are directly connected to in some way, and that's a very special feeling. That when that goes, when service is gone, that can be missing. And Team Rubicon UK gives the opportunity for those that have served to do it again, but in their spare time as volunteers. And you know, the military has a culture of walking towards trouble. You know, run towards the gunfire. And at the moment, that gunfire is here in the UK, and that problem is COVID. And most people aren't seeing and feeling the crisis, which is great because they're at home, and that's what they should be doing. But some people have to walk towards it, like the NHS have done. You know, they are right out there 24 hours a day, putting themselves in harm's way for our benefit. And I wanted us to do our bit in supporting them. And I knew the veteran community would back us up in that. We deployed without enough money and without enough people because there was a need. And I was right, the veteran community has come forward. And they are putting themselves at risk. They're walking towards this trouble, and they're not getting paid. And it's incredibly humbling to see.
And how, so you talk about them not getting paid. How are you funding this? How are you getting funding for your operations?
Well, we're a charity, so everything has come from public donation. Although we did the work for the government in the first period, we didn't get any government funding. and we just saw a situation that was slipping away that we could influence for the good. So we threw the dice and we went anyway, and we've been lucky. BlackRock Asset Management came in and gave us a significant bit of funding, which has helped, and some others is starting to come now. But it's all charity work, and our capability relies on our volunteers. But just being a volunteer doesn't mean they're probably not the most professional people out there doing work, because they're incredibly skilled and incredibly driven individuals.
What sort of tasks are you deploying now at the moment? I mean, the government's just announced, or at the end of last week, that we're going into a further period of 3 weeks lockdown. That's surely going to bring about some strains on resources and holes at the seams. How are you deploying, or what's your strategy in this new light of another 3 weeks, and it could be longer?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at an operation that's going to last for us between 6 and 12 months, because as the support that we've been doing in this part of the crisis has been around supporting the NHS and the emergency needs. But thankfully, we are starting to see that death toll starting to drop, and I hope it drops much quicker, so that part of the crisis is over. But then we move into the protracted part of the crisis. There was 1.5 million people that were shielded initially to stay in for 12 weeks, and they were the initial vulnerable. But the greater vulnerable community is now going to grow up to 15 million people, because there's going to be communities that become vulnerable because of the situation, because of work, because of lack of food, because of social isolation. And now we'll be switching our attentions to partnering with the Red Cross and how we provide the critical support to them, for up to 12 months, because this is going to be a long recovery for all of those communities.
And have you got facilities? Because presumably you're getting equipment in and then deploying it. Have you got enough facilities to use to deploy?
I mean, when you look at our website and when you look at the effect that we deliver in disaster zones, we look like a really big shiny organisation, but we're like a duck on water underneath. We're kicking like hell, because actually we're a bit shabby.
Sitting at the moment, are you in your offices at the moment?
In our office, and there's paint peeling off the walls, and there's I don't know when this asbestos was last painted, but we don't have fancy facilities. We do everything because of the people we attract, and what we're doing is taking other people's logistics aid, and we're getting it to the places we need, because we can bring that expertise that drives action, that speeds up action. So most of what we do is about putting good people in the right situations to get things done. Tomorrow I'm going to Cardiff, where we've got an operation starting with 50 people building hospital beds in the Principality Stadium. So it's where things are stalling, we can inject pace to those projects.
And tell me, Prince Harry's involved as well, isn't he, in Team Rubicon? What is his involvement, or what has been his involvement?
Oh, well, we're best mates, me and Prince Harry.
You and Prince Harry like that.
Yeah, super tight. Now, we met on a podcast on, when did we do that? Last week, and it went out on Sunday through a good mate of mine, Michael Coates.
Yeah, I know Michael as well. Yeah, he's great. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a top bloke, isn't he? I quite like the fact he's got this really punchy beginning, firefighter, soldier, Lululemon ambassador.
Yeah, I know. Doesn't quite fit, does it? And I've seen him. He actually he did a few talks in Richmond at Lululemon, and I went down and I watched him a few times. And he had some great guests on as well.
Yeah. So I always just think about him in yoga pants now. But yeah, we did this podcast. So Prince Harry first deployed with Team Rubicon in 2015 to Nepal, which was when we were founded. And of course, he has the ability to put so much attention on charity so quickly. And I really appreciate the fact that he did that podcast with us, because the poor bloke can't win. No matter what he does, he gets criticised in the press. And so he lent in for us there at the weekend, and it gave us a massive amount of attention, which we really, really appreciate.
That's fantastic. Is it just veterans that you're taking up, or can normal civilians volunteer as well?
Outside of COVID, anybody can join Team Rubicon that shares our values and has our desire to serve. The reason we're looking for veterans, particularly in this crisis, is because we're built around the military approach. So everything we do is largely pulled from our time in service. So we know that veterans can drop into that very quickly. So we don't need to provide them with too much training, because they can assimilate quickly. When we get through this crisis, we'll open our recruitment up again to the wider population. We've got a lot of emergency services working with us. We've got a lot of people from all sorts of backgrounds, teachers, builders, you name it. There's a real mix here. But it's just at the moment through this crisis, we really need to lean on the veteran community because we know that they'll be able to get what we need to do very, very quickly.
And do you think it's giving vets that have served a new sort of sense of purpose?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. When you leave the military, when I was in the Royal Marines, like I had this identity. I knew exactly who I was every day, and I had a uniform, and I knew the job, and I had a reputation. And I had my friends, and I knew where I was going, and life made sense, because I joined in my very early 20s, and so life was really clear in the Marines, and I was very, very proud of it. And then it goes, and you go into a world that you don't fully understand because your peers are 10 years ahead of you in it. They've been management consultants or bankers or whatever it is, and they've progressed in their career. And so you're trying to catch up, but also your driving focus is gone. The reason you get out of bed in the morning, because we were never motivated by money, because we wouldn't have joined the military in the first place.
Yeah.
Then when the primary driver is cash, it didn't make sense to me anymore. And it doesn't make sense to most of the people that I speak to here. So you can do whatever job it is you want to do or need to do to pay your mortgage, but you can come and be who you were here for 2 weeks a year, 4 weeks a year, whatever it is, how much time you can give, you can come and serve and belong to that team, be surrounded by like-minded individuals that are driven by outcome and not necessarily by external factors like money. And that's incredibly powerful, giving people that purpose back. When we came back from Mozambique this time last year, one of our really engaged gracious volunteers, Mark Bradshaw, he's done 3 really interesting careers, and he said that 3 weeks in Mozambique was the most important thing he'd ever done in his life. Totally life-changing for him to serve in such a selfless way with people that needed it so much. That he said it's a defining point in his life.
And Richard, you also, after your career in the military, as I understand it, you went into the banking career for a while. I was in the finance industry for 20 years. I know what a soulless place it is.
Yeah. Look, we have to edit this out. It'll ruin my credibility. Look, I left the Marines at a rush. I was getting medically discharged after getting a bit banged up in Afghanistan. So, and I was married at the time, to my ex-wife, and she wanted to go back to London. And I was this Cornish lad that didn't know anything about London, and I ended up in an investment banking environment, which for 6 months, really exciting, new cerebral challenge, loads of pressure, but it soon rubs off because the culture, I just couldn't. I'm built to serve in teams where you're trying to sacrifice for each other, not where you're trying to sacrifice your mate for your own gains, and that really rubbed on me. But it was a fantastic learning experience, and it set me up to do this, because without that experience, I probably couldn't do this. So I don't begrudge it, but it certainly wasn't my higher calling in life.
Completely. But I think a lot of people, certainly later in life, when you're attracted to the money at first, but when you realize there's greater things in life, and like you say, serving, whether that's serving in the military or serving as a doctor, or the nurses that are doing amazing things. I mean, I think that's one thing that's going to come out of COVID-19. It's not necessarily the fat cats in the city that are really serving. And I can say that because I was there for 20 years. But it's people such as yourselves. It's the doctors, the nurses, the lorry drivers, the delivery men, the people that are on the front line. I mean,
the supermarkets. We've got to get fed.
Yeah, the bus drivers, the ordinary people. And even the people that are setting up these groups as well. I'm on a number of these groups on Facebook that are really getting key line workers and support, and trying to generate as much support, whether that's even just delivering some grocery shopping or whatever to the elderly neighbour. There is a real sense of community that's coming from this.
Yeah, and it's lovely, isn't it? It's a shame it always has to be something so terrible to bring us closer together again. But I hope something positive comes out of that, and that is that we do recalibrate ourselves a little bit as a community and as a country, and hopefully as a world, because this is affecting everybody around the world at the moment. And if maybe we can come out of this and all just take a breath and realize that the commodities that have driven us for so long maybe aren't as important as speaking to your neighbor or connecting with your family, or driving around less, because you don't have to be face to face all the time.
Do you think the government's got it right?
I think I can empathise with the position that those decision makers sit in. I know I have to make difficult decisions often, but it's nowhere near the scale of decisions they have to make. And I'm not trying to be political here. I think they've acted incredibly well on the information they have at the time. I'm sure when we pull this through, there'll be mistakes, but whether I've been in war or here, we all make mistakes. And I think they've got the nation's best interest at heart. Could we have done this better? I'm sure we could have done. And certainly when you look down into the lower parts of government, they're set up to deliver parts of this mission. They're not connected enough. And there does need to be a reform in how different government departments deliver work. But I think at the top, when you look at Cobra there in the main cabinet, I think they're showing some incredible leadership in some of the most incredibly testing times. But maybe government needs a bit of a shake-up in how it delivers these crises in the future.
Do you see this going? I mean, we're told that it's another 3 weeks of lockup. Do you see that being extended?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the lockdown is going to end necessarily in 3 weeks. I think you might start to ease a little bit, and there might be slightly more things being opened. But the lockdown and the acute part of this crisis isn't the big problem. Most of us will be able to start going back to our normal life in 3, 6, 8 weeks, whatever it is. It's going to be the long-lasting effect to the vulnerable communities and the communities that don't always have a voice. It's easy for you and I to jump on Zoom here and connect to whoever we want, but there's communities that don't speak English. There's communities that are seeking asylum. There's people incredibly poor in this country still, and I really do. I fear for them in the long run, and that's what we're gearing up to support so wholeheartedly over for the next year. We really took a massive gamble deploying here because we didn't have enough cash and it could have put us out of business. But we'll keep doing that till it's done, because there's people in the UK that no one should starve to death in the UK. No one should starve to death anywhere in this world, but especially here.
Yeah. So what's your biggest challenge right now?
Funding's always our biggest challenge. We've got a slight breather, but that only gives us an extra month. We needed government to be a bit quicker in its decision making early to give us better access. We sort of achieved that now with our partnership with the Red Cross. That did stall our ability to deliver work in the early weeks. Now we have that access. Now we have a pan UK spread. We've got to keep the veteran volunteer numbers coming through, because whilst we've got 4,000 at the moment, people will start going back to work at some point. So we need to keep growing that base with a view to be delivering this for 6 months. And we've got to keep fighting the funding battle. We're not alone in that. The charity sector is massively underfunded right now and also being massively lent on. But we feel it particularly acutely because we never sit on money, and we never hold any reserves. It comes in and we spend it on operations.
So how does somebody sign up? If someone's watching this, how do they sign up?
So it's so quick. If they get across to teamrubiconuk.org, there's 2 big buttons on the top. One, if you're a veteran, you can sign up, and the other one, if you're an organisation that's looking to give resource to the cause, you can sign up there. And there's also a donate button in the top corner. It's really simple.
We'll put the link as well. I'll put the link on this interview as well. So if anyone wants to either donate or sign up, they can go straight to you. Richard, is there anything else that you would like to add? I'd love to get your views on, and you have touched on this, on lessons that we can, in 6 months or a year, what are we going to learn from this? What lessons can we take from this?
I think the biggest thing that I take away from this is, and I'm talking a lot about the positives of the military. I'm not saying that military is the answer to everything, and that because we serve, we're somehow all excellent people. We all have our shortfalls. But what the military gives us is a focus on action, and to be able to deploy on an operation with only 60% of the solution. And I think as we come out of this, the speed of action is what I take away. As a nation, we needed to forget some of our other problems to focus on an operational imperative. And that's why I alluded to government laydowns. They're very worried about their part of the ship and not the other. Of course, this is a holistic problem that we need to face into. I think community groups have faced into it better probably than we have as a country, because they've pulled together to solve their problems. And I think on the nice side of that, the lessons we can learn is that being connected as humans is really important. And it doesn't always have to be in the darkest times when we lean back in with each other and help each other out. I lived in London for a long time, and I didn't know my neighbours' names left and right. I'm lucky I live in Poole now in Dorset, where everyone's much more friendly. But to connect with your neighbours and to at least know their names and say hi in the morning, because people shouldn't be lonely anymore in this country.
Completely agree, and people, and I am noticing that on the street now, even though we're not going out, but just passing the neighbours now and again, it is, and it's just even sort of saying, is there anything that you need? Richard, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, and all the veterans as well. Honestly, without you doing a phenomenal job and stepping up. And as I say, if there's anything else I can do, I'll put the donate buttons and put the sign up on this. But I just want to say, from my heart to your heart, thank you so much for everything you and the veterans are doing for our country. You're stepping up and doing it again. It's amazing.
Thank you.